When thinking of American cars, usually just over-the-top muscle cars flood our brains, like the Corvette Z6. But there are many more vehicles that were conceived in the USA, which we often overlook, especially sports cars. Of course, you'll have your fair share of muscle cars to choose from. But there are even some lightweight roadsters that compete alongside the like of the Mazda Miata, and even some supercars like the Hennessy Venom F5 that originated from the land of the free, albeit a bit out of our price range today. Today we'll be having a look at some of the best value for money sports cars you can buy that won't cost you a dime, over $20,000, and won't feel like a hunk of junk when traversing some back roads. 2010 Mustang GT, $14,999. Let's start today's list with the obvious choice for anyone looking for a fun, powerful machine that won't break the bank, the Ford Mustang GT. The Mustang we're talking about today is part of the 5th generation stallion and is excellent in every single way. Underneath its hood lies a naturally aspirated 4.6-liter modular V8 that produces 315 horsepower and 325 pounds-foot of torque, and with a 0 to 60 time of 4.9 seconds and a quarter-mile time of 13.5 seconds, its performance figures are still relevant today. Not only is its V8 nearly indestructible, but we found one for sale on Car Gurus from the year 2010 for $14,999. 1998 Chevrolet Camaro Z28, $12,990. The 4th generation Camaro was also called the Catfish Camaro for obvious reasons, and not only is it one of the most underrated Camaros ever built, its performance-orientated version, but the Z28 also sells for just under $13,000 on the used market. The Z28 wasn't any ordinary Camaro from the 90s either. After all, it's named after one of the best muscle cars ever made. Its 5.7-liter V8 engine pumped out a whopping 275 horsepower and 325 pounds-foot of torque, and it was mated to a 6-speed manual gearbox. So, not only will you be driving one of the most underappreciated American icons, but you'll be driving one of the most unique rides on the road. 2008 Pontiac Solstice, $14,000. Remember how we said in our introduction that America also produced fun, little topless sports cars? Well, here's the first one out of the bunch. It was called the Solstice and was made by Pontiac throughout the 2000s. Unfortunately, it wasn't as lively a Miata since it came equipped with a subpar 177 horsepower 2.4-liter 4-cylinder engine. But because it was rear-wheel drive, it was playful through corners, and its striking looks is just the cherry on top of the cake. 2005 Chrysler Crossfire, $10,000. We're not quite done with the American Miata counterparts just yet. This one is called the Chrysler Crossfire. Underneath its unique body, it's based on a Mercedes-Benz SLK. Therefore, it has the nimble handling you'd expect from a light Mercedes sports car, but it comes at a much lower cost. In its base model, the Crossfire comes with a rather surprising 3.2-liter V6 engine that puts out 215 horsepower and 229 pounds-foot of torque, which was able to rocket the little teardrop-shaped Chrysler to 60 miles per hour from a standstill in 6.4 seconds, much quicker than the NC Miata at the time. 1995 Chevrolet Corvette C4, $12,850. One of the quintessential American sports car names has to be the Chevy Corvette, and thanks to our old pal depreciation, you can buy a C4 Corvette for under $13,000. It might not be the top-of-the-line ZR1 Corvette, but even its base model, the C4 generates an impressive 300 horsepower and 340 pounds-foot of torque from its 5.7-liter V8 powertrain. Not only does it have a ton of power to dash down the quarter mile in under 14 seconds, but its timeless design will forever maintain its prestigious stature. 2004 Pontiac GTO, $12,000. The original Pontiac GTO is a muscle car legend, and in the early 2000s, Pontiac decided to rekindle the iconic name. Instead of being a stunning muscle car like its ancestor, the new Pontiac GTO was a wolf in sheep's clothing. It had a monstrous naturally aspirated 5.7-liter V8 hidden beneath its hood that sent 350 horsepower and 365 pounds-foot of torque to the rear wheels, allowing a cloud of smoke to appear at your wheel and reach highway speeds in just over 5 seconds, which is still quicker than some modern sports cars today. All of this can be yours for just an ounce over $10,000. 1990 Plymouth Laser, $11,000. Not many people remember the Plymouth Laser, even some of the most hardcore auto enthusiasts. But there's a reason for that. When initially launched in 1989, the Laser had some tough competition like the Mazda Miata, and even some of its own brand's other sports cars like the Mitsubishi Eclipse. However, it did age like a fine wine. Its distinctive glass bubble rear end, tiny body, rear light bar, and pop-up headlights all contributed to its quirky appearance. Its sub-100 horsepower was the nail in the coffin though. Performance-wise, the base model Laser would reach 60 miles per hour from a stop only once 9 seconds had gone by. But since it was front-wheel drive and had a 5-speed stick shift to conjure its power, it tackled tight turns with an undeniable tenacity, and it might be one of the most unique and fun cars you can buy for the money. 2007 Chevrolet Cobalt SS, $11,000. There were a variety of engine choices offered with the Chevy Cobalt SS. They ranged from a naturally aspirated one to a turbocharged one, and even a supercharged powertrain. For the sake of our budget today, we found a naturally aspirated one for sale on Car Gurus for just $11,000. This engine was the most underappreciated by the bunch, but it still packed a decent 173 horsepower sized punch with 163 pounds-foot of torque too. The Cobalt was front-wheel drive, which meant drifting was out of the question, but doing some burnouts and dashing around tight bends at insane speeds, that's a whole other story. 2005 Cadillac XLR, $19,000. Many people often forget about the Cadillac XLR's existence, and unrightfully so. It looked like a slightly more compact, sophisticated version of a Chevy C6 Corvette. And ironically, it wasn't just the silhouette they had in common, but both were powered by a similar powertrain too. The base model XLR was powered by a naturally aspirated 4.6-liter Northstar V8 engine that emitted 320 horsepower and 310 pounds-foot of torque. It might not have had as much grunt as a Corvette at the time, but it was definitely more unique than the Vet. And if you're craving a tad more power, Cadillac also built an XLR-V that had a supercharged V8. 2008 Saturn Sky Redline, $15,000. The aforementioned Pontiac Solstice and the Saturn Sky were basically reskinned versions of each other, but the Sky's top performance spec, the underrated Redline, reigned superior over the bunch. The base model Sky was powered by the same inline 4 found in the Solstice, but the Redline decreased the engine's displacement and upped the power output with the help of a turbocharger. It made use of a turbocharged 2.0-liter 4-banger that pumped 260 horsepower and 260 pounds-foot of torque to the rear wheels, which resulted in it being much more rapid than any Mazda Miata. It is worth mentioning that the same powertrain eventually made its way into the Solstice lineup with the Solstice GXP, but we'd argue the Saturn Sky Redline offers better value for money since it costs just $15,000 on the used market today.